So today, guys, I recently have learned about this young lady, and
I
I'm
like that.
amazed at how much she's accomplished and how she's done it. But I'm more so that she's still smiling this early in the morning. So, Janet,
You too.
welcome, Janet. How are you doing?
Thanks. I'm better than I deserve, as Dave Ramsey says, but I'm doing great. Thanks.
I love it. Now, Janet, the first question I want to ask because the audience doesn't, my audience doesn't know who you are, is what makes you where does it come from where you can make tough decisions?
Um, God, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't know that I can take credit so much for making decisions as accepting what comes to me. Um,
Hmm.
we plan, God laughs kind of thing, and I've had a lot of bad things happen in my life. But I've found when I don't plan so much, the things that are out there that I'm not really focusing on or I'm not allowing myself to see because I'm trying to get what I want, those things are so much better. And they're things I never could
Wow.
have come up with myself. So
Wow.
I think that's kind of my unconscious philosophy.
What's something that you didn't plan as hard as you mentioned and something amazing ended up happening?
I got Panama. Panama.
Hmm.
Yeah, I went through a really bad time. I literally lost everything,
Wow.
mostly in the '08 crash. But before that, I lost my oldest son to a construction accident,
Hmm.
and it just went. And then that was 6 months after my husband had his first stroke at the same age his father died from a stroke.
Oh my
And he
gosh.
gave up when our son died. He just literally gave up. And then the '08 crash took everything else. And in trying to just not even recover, but save us from all that, I found Panama, and it was totally by accident. I heard about the free zone. I was working two, three jobs. I'd gone back to school to ward off student loans. The only time I had left in my day, in my life, was when I was sleeping. And I thought, well,
Wow.
I'll buy some stuff from there and send it back and let it and put it on eBay back then and let it sell itself, while I was sleeping. And that was it. And once I found it, it was like I was there in a past life. And I just had that deep, the second I got off the plane, I had that deep relief breath. And
Hmm.
I knew this was it. And I can't take credit for the planning of everything else that happened. But my life is amazing now.
Hmm. And you've been in Panama, you mentioned 14 years.
I've lived there 14 years. The first time I went was 3 years before that.
Okay. Now, so what sparks Janet to say, "Hey, I can actually move to a different country and make it happen."
Well, I think those 3 years were probably most of it. I went back, I started a business, not that one, but I was introduced to some Panamanians and they helped me along and kind of told me what Panama needs. And at that time in 2009, I started a shuttle service because the
Wow.
taxis were, yeah, the taxis weren't painted yellow yet. And so a car would pull up with no bumper, no license plate, a cracked windshield, and they would say to people who were coming to Panama because they were losing everything in the States and taking what they had and investing in Panama when it was very, very cheap. And the taxi driver or the driver would get out and say, taxi, taxi. And you'd go, no, thanks, I'm good. I'll walk,
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh.
Yeah. But so I bought a very cheap van, 7-passenger van, shipped it down.
Oh my
It only cost
gosh.
I know ignorance is bliss. I'm telling you. Um, it was a Pontiac. Okay, back then it only cost me $800 to ship it down. It's a big difference from today.
Big difference
It
from
was a
today.
Pontiac, I didn't know that they did not service Pontiacs there at the time.
Yeah.
So again, what kept me going back and forth is buying the parts and bringing them down.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so I would go back and forth. I was a teacher in Florida at the time and new to that. That was another life career change. And so I would do that until the part became the engine, and I couldn't do that anymore. Couldn't fit that in my suitcase.
Wait, how
So
are you were getting the parts back through your
I
suitcase?
would, small parts,
Yeah.
things I was flying a $79 Spirit flight, and I would pay for the extra luggage and I would bring the part down with me. And then my Panamanian friend partner at the time, he would like stand over the mechanic because there is a thing called we call gringo bingo. And if I had stood there, plus I'm female, and I mean not to put down the equality, but it is what it is. And so he would watch them and make sure they did it right. And
Wow. So
so
you
we
had
did quite well. But the we had to let that poor Pontiac die finally. It was a slow, miserable death. But anyway.
so then after the Pontiac, you make this business, a shuttle business.
Mhm.
You start with a Pontiac. You keep going after that?
After that died, it was kind of like what's next. And I realized my husband had passed by then. Like I said, I had lost everything, including a farm in Inverness, Florida. And my other two children were grown and with their significant others, their spouses now. And I just didn't know who I was anymore. I
Mm.
was no longer the mommy, the wife, the anything. And I met my husband when I was 15. I didn't have a date or, anything. Sorry about that. Um, so I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so what I did was I took a leave of absence from my teaching job for 1 year. And you had to have, in order to do that and guarantee that your job was there when you got back, I figured I love Panama. I'm happy in Panama. I'm not happy here. I don't know who I am. I need to get my head on straight and figure out what's next for me.
Mm.
So I took the leave of absence. I got a contract with a school. I didn't know about international teaching jobs at the time, so I did it through people I knew. And the day that I landed, the school closed. So I was down there, yeah, right? So here I am with, I think I had like $3,000 to my name at the time. And I thought, I'm not going home a failure. I can't do this.
I
My
love that. I
stubborn,
love that.
the stubborn German in me would not allow that. And so I just started pounding the sidewalks and finding independent and private teaching jobs. And I rented a room in this big apartment with like five men using all the same bathroom. And so, I mean, what can I say? And so then I finally got a contract with the school. And there's a lot of chapters to all this in between and all. And when the second I renewed my leave of absence because it was kind of in the middle, didn't know that I couldn't keep renewing it. So I got a better job in another school. And then I remember the school calling me and said, "Oh, we're happy to welcome you home on August 8th." And I said, "I'm not ready to come back." And they said, "Well, you either have to come back or you have to retire." And I said, "Well, send me the paperwork.
Oh,
I'm
I
not coming back."
hear. Wow.
Yeah. So I wasn't really going to lose that much. I hadn't been a teacher that long. It wasn't going to make that much of a difference in my retirement. So I was happy. I was finally happy. And I was doing
Mm.
okay. They don't pay as much as they do in the United States, but I was doing okay. So did that
I
for 5 years.
how so this you lose your son, you lose your
Hmm.
farm, you lose your husband. How do you keep
Hmm.
moving after that amount of loss?
You know, I, how do you not like? What are your choices? Do you? I guess I just figured I don't have a choice. You just keep going.
Mm.
I mean, I'm thankful for strong parents. They were depression parents, and I learned from them. You just do what you need to do. You pick yourself up and, suck it up, walk it off and keep going. And things just kept coming to me. I'm very, very grateful for that. I've
Mm.
just and I think I had hit rock bottom, so oh well, can't go much lower than
Can't
that.
go much lower than that. With Janet, you make you create the business, you go
Hmm.
into teaching and things like that. What was the conversation in your head? You said, I can't go back. I can't go back to failure. Like, what was the conversation in your head at that time where you're like, I came here, I was gonna have a job, and then the school closed
Hmm.
as soon as I got here.
Well, I think at that point, with the school closing and all that, my thought was, I'm not going back a failure.
Mhm.
That was it. I couldn't face that. I couldn't go back with my tail between my legs and say, what now? And go back to what I had, the reason I had left. I just wasn't happy. After the '08 crash, I worked, I was a truancy officer and I worked out of a police station for the most part, right before I became a teacher. And I just remember passing all these people, all these teachers who were unhealthy, overweight, from the sedentary lifestyle, taking home more than they could possibly do in one night and going one day closer to retirement.
Wow.
This is not what I want. And they were dropping dead from the stress and, all this unhealthy lifestyle and all that kind of stuff and fighting the system. And like, this is not what I want, but I don't know what's out there. So, when I found Panama and it just kind of evolved into other things, I felt the happiness and I just walked around Panama and rode on back then the Diablo Rojos and the 25-cent buses that they were new. The metro was brand
Yeah.
new. I knew the Diablo Rojos, which were old US school buses, and they weren't in that great a shape and they were all decorated up. And the one school I worked in was over the Bridge of the Americas, and I would go and get on the Diablo Rojo, and I would go over the Bridge of the America, and the windows didn't go up, and the rain's coming in my face, and they're playing bachata music, and I'm wiggling in the seats, and I look up, and it's crammed, packed, jam packed. And I look at the Panamanians and they're looking at me like, Gringa loca? Like, we have to do this. What's wrong with her? But it was so beautiful. And
Wow.
I'm going over the Panama Canal. I mean, oh my God, that was just surreal to me. It was awesome.
That's huge because you said something that was key. They're thinking we have to do this. Why is she doing this? And I think sometimes people may feel if you're from the States or you've lived in the States that you have the best life. But you're saying I'm living a better life in a different country.
Hmm.
How is that? How is that for people who are like, is she crazy?
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe, but anyway, um, but I think that was my draw to Panama, and it was at a time when I needed to feel this, that I met people who, by United States standards, really had less than nothing, but they were happy and they're generous
Yes.
with what they do have. If someone on the block in the poorest of neighborhoods, if someone on the block makes soup, everyone will eat. Might have a little less chicken, might have a little more water, but no one will be hungry. And in the
Mm,
United States, I just felt the greed, and me, and this is for me. And that just at that time, that's what I needed. I needed to realize, man, I don't have it so bad. These people don't know if they're going to have a quarter for the
whoa.
bus tomorrow, but they're going to share what they have with you tonight.
That's life.
Ah,
That's
ah,
that's life. That's life.
yeah.
So with
So
so with that, you have the business. You created a second business.
I did. Okay. So I worked for the schools for 5 years
Okay.
and I went to buy an apartment in the city and I went and applied for a mortgage. And I was turned down because I didn't have something they call features. And what that does is show how much you have, how many you have, and how much you have put into, say, Social Security. Well, the school that I worked for gave me what they called features, and they were nothing but a blank piece of paper with numbers on them. They weren't
Oh,
real
oh
features, and
no.
I didn't know this. So they had been taking the money out of my pay, but not giving it to Social Security and the government. And
Where was
so
it
I
going
sued them
to?
in their pocket.
Oh
So
no.
bienvenida Panama. So but most of the teachers, the international teachers, stayed for like 2 years. That's an international teaching thing, and I knew nothing about that. So I ended up suing them, and I was lucky I won. So, but of course, I couldn't work there anymore. So again, what do I do this time when I grow up? And I don't ever want to grow up. It's not fun. So, so I took that money and had a business partner, and I started a language school. Of course, I didn't teach the
Wow.
Spanish. I taught the English, but I hired Spanish teachers. And I did that for a few years, and it went two, I think it was. And it just wasn't for me. I was retired. I was working 7 days a week, like 12 hours a day,
Oh
and
man.
not really getting along with the partner. So I said, you know what? And I don't need this. I'm retired. So I gave that over to her. And again, what am I going to do this time when I grow up? And where am I going to settle? I was lucky enough coming in through the back door with Panamanians mostly. I got to see a lot of the country and places I wouldn't have seen as a tourist or really as an expat too much. So I thought, but I don't know where I want to settle. I was in the city all this time, and I thought,
Okay.
well, okay. I heard somewhere about house sitting, and I thought, okay, well, I'll do that for about 6 months and just travel around. Those people have done all the research for me. So ended up being, as my daughter called me, fabulously homeless for 9 years. And all I did was
Whoa.
travel for 9 years.
Explain that
So
to the people who don't know what that means. You
okay, okay,
okay.
thank you. Yeah. House sitting, international house sitting is not paid. You don't get paid for that. It's an exchange of accommodations for pet and home care. And I've
Okay.
done things, I've managed properties, I've done cats and dogs, I did a pet hotel. There's all kinds of options out there. And I do it internationally. In Europe, in Florida when I visit my family. So, I'm not wearing out my welcome. And so I'm not invading their space too much. And I know, I like my own space too, and I love animals. So I've done that. So I do. There's one platform, just so you know, called Trusted House Sitters, and I started on that. But there's dozens of them. There are some in the
Wow.
United States, but that do get paid. But internationally, it's really a thing where uh the taxing, if you were to get paid internationally, the taxes and all would be ridiculous to have to do all that paperwork. So anyway, every time I thought I was going to settle down, someone would call me up and say, hey, you available? Sure. So,
Wow.
and take off. So
How
it's
did
been
you
a life, I'll tell you.
how did you get that good where people started just calling you to come house it for them?
In Panama, all along like Coronado, Boquete, there's all these expat pockets. So, and they like to go home and visit their family, travel, whatever. And once I would sit for them, they would refer me to somebody else, or they would call me next time, and I come back. So, at this point, it's mostly repeats and referrals. But then I'd like to travel, so I would go to Europe. And why do I want to pay for a hotel or Airbnb if I can house sit? So I would plan my travels around whatever house sits I would get.
Wow.
So fun.
Where does this amazing mind come from to like what I keep hearing is like you are so resilient and you're like, I'm going to find a way no matter
Yeah,
what
I
life
wish.
throws at me.
I wish I could take credit for it, but I just have these guardian angels watching me and
Mm,
guiding me. Things come to me. I've just been so, so blessed. And again, when I was trying to plant as a little kid, all I wanted from the time I was a little kid, I wanted a log cabin in the middle of the woods in 5 acres.
I
And
love that.
I had that. I didn't get the log cabin. My son, it was in construction, he was going to build it. When he died, I didn't think I could live in the house that he built. I just thought that would be too. I think now it might have been a tribute, but what happened with my husband, it just wasn't meant to be. And these signs came down and hit me hard on the head. So I don't know.
Mm.
When things present themselves, I'm like, oh, that seems like that's cool. And I think I just don't hold on to, after losing all that, I don't have the need to hold on to things or ideas or whatever. I like the rush of going after it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, what's next? And
That's something that most people never see that way. So you said something you said, I don't I don't like the idea of holding on to things or holding on to ideas. I just go after it. I don't think most people think like that at all.
Fear of the unknown, I
Hmm.
think.
Hmm.
I mean, just watch George Carlin's stuff if you haven't watched that video. We have stuff, we buy a bigger place for more stuff, and then we get more stuff to fill the place, and then it just keeps going on and on and on. And I was guilty of that. I had two four-bedroom homes at one time full of my mother's antiques. And so that was
Wow.
hard to let go of but for the most part, they were taken from me. It wasn't, I don't take credit for parting, but it was a layers of the onion thing too, of letting go of those things. It's not like I walked away and went, okay, what's next? It was scary.
Mm.
But when I had stuff in storage one time, and I think about this when people are talking about shipping an enormous amount of things that are not going to survive in Panama to Panama, right? They will crumble. You'll open the closet, pick up that pair of shoes, and there's 17 pieces because,
Yeah.
you know, but I would go back to the storage unit, whether it was in Florida or in Panama, even while I was still downsizing when I worked for the schools. And I would take the key, and before I put the key in the lock, I'd go, what's in here, or what's in here that's important to me? I couldn't remember half of what I had in there. Why was I keeping it and
Oh,
paying for it?
paying for it.
Yeah, I wasn't using it. What am I holding on to it for? Now I have in Panama,
Mm.
I have um, a 2017 Chevy Spark. This is just about the smallest car made, and everything I own fits in that car. If it doesn't, it goes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's freedom,
That's
you know?
freedom.
Yeah.
So you don't see
And I
you
found
don't
out
see
like half of that is just in case stuff. I try not to keep just in case stuff because if I need it, I'll get it. Otherwise,
I so that hits me hard because I know some people who are we call them doomsday preparers where they have to prepare everything just in case that one thing happens and you're like if I need it I'll get it
that
if
was
not if
me.
not. Hmm.
I was like that, and I think it came again from being raised by depression parents because everything has a second, third, and fourth life, and nothing is trash, and so everything was just in case. And finally, the freedom, the feeling of being able to just get in your car and go, and that's it. It's amazing. It
Mm.
is amazing.
This is so inspiring because
Oh, I'm glad.
over the course of just this conversation, like I've learned, okay, she's had loss, but she hasn't let it stop her. She's started businesses, figured it didn't work, and that didn't stop her. She's decided I'm going to try house sitting, and then it works for years in advance. But the thing that sticks out to me the most is this whole interview, you smiled about all of those experiences.
Yeah, they were great. I had fantastic memories. Fantastic. So
I love
what
that.
can
I
I say?
love that. I love that.
I'm good. I'm
Now,
glad.
Janet, for the to if you could leave the audience with most people I've known have been in a place or a space where they're deciding if I want to move abroad or if I want to leave this career because it's draining me, if I want to do these things, but they feel, and rightfully so, they have so much, I guess, that they would lose. What would you say to someone like that?
I think first of all, think a little bit deeper. What are you really losing? Or are you
Mm.
just afraid of what you might lose?
Hmm.
I mean, I think that's the one thing. And then, okay, as far as moving abroad, and I know if you own a home, that's difficult, especially if you had it for a lot of years and you've put a lot of money into it. But what are you struggling with too? Is it in this economy, in this day and age, is it getting too difficult to just stay afloat? And is that how you really want to
Wow.
spend your life, with everything that's out there, to be attached to this place that you're spending on repairs, on mortgage, on taxes, on everything else? Or do you want to go out there and live? And,
Oh.
you know, the other thing, again, George Carlin, he wasn't just a comedian.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you know, um, the other thing is, if you're going to move abroad, what's the worst that can happen? You go back. Okay. Or you move on, you find another country, you find another neighborhood. All right, that's not a horrible thing. So what? But you had that
Mm.
experience. You
Mm.
maybe learned a language. You opened your eyes to another culture. And
Yes.
that's the other thing is that I've learned from this is no one gets to decide what right is. Right is only a perspective. I'm sure you can relate to this. Right is only a
Mm.
perspective based on what your norms are, what you're accustomed to. But it doesn't mean they're wrong. And
Wait, did you create that yourself? No one gets to
no, I
decide.
don't know. I
That
doubt it. I don't know. I probably stole it from somewhere.
was good. That made sense.
But it's so true, and I'm sure you can relate to some of this. Getting accustomed to horas latina, like the no time that doesn't exist in Panama. They will be late, except when they're behind the wheel in the city. And then they're in a hurry. It's the only time they're in a hurry. But it's true to be able to sit and savor this moment without
Hmm.
your mind driving you crazy about what you should be doing next by somebody else's standards. Sit and enjoy what you have and who you're with in this moment. In a restaurant, in the United States, they're just trying to turn over that table, and they're
ASAP.
back every 2
ASAP.
seconds, whether you want them there. Yeah. In Panama, sometimes you need to go in the kitchen and jump somebody in order to get that next drink. Because, but what
Yeah,
they're,
seriously.
you know, but what they're doing is they're respecting your time with, even if it's only in a glass of water, they're respecting your time with your friends or your family. And you wave your arm. And I've had expats say, "Oh, I would never do that," up and step. I'm like, "Well, you're going to sit there for a
You're
long
gonna
time with
sit
that
there
empty
for a
glass of water
long,
unless
a
you call them out."
long
Yeah,
time.
yeah, but that's okay with them.
Hmm.
It's the value of your time with others is what's more important. What you have in this moment. Yo no sé mañana.
Yeah, and that's life.
It is. Oh
Relationships.
my God. It is amazing. And I'm not saying it's easy to adjust to that, because I was raised with, 15 minutes early is on time is late.
Yeah.
That's how I was raised in the business world in the United States. But that's not the way it is everywhere. And to
No.
just open your eyes to that is cool,
And be
you know.
okay with it. Like different
Right.
cultures have different, not rules, but they just have
Respect.
different, yeah, respect it. Not if I was in the States, they would have been got to me. And it's like, well, you're not in the States. And you can go back if you want.
Exactly. You always have that option, but I land in the States, and I just feel that, oh my God, I'm like stressed and people are angry and they're
Yeah.
hurried and things like that. It's not that I don't love my homeland, but I have found, for me, I'm not saying for everybody, for me, I have found a better life.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, Janet, we have to stay in touch because
I would love that.
I love this because
Me
there's so much to unpack um about the decisions, the gratitude, the relearning, the all of that is what makes life beautiful. And you are an example of
Oh,
living
thank you.
living life, not letting life just dictate what it's gonna do to you. You're like, no, these things happen. I'm not gonna let it stop me. I'm gonna keep moving. So I'm pretty sure my audience is gonna get a
Oh,
lot
I'm
of
so
goodness
happy.
from this. So thank you
That's
so
great.
much, Janet.
I appreciate the opportunity, Drew, and it's such a pleasure to meet you.
Anytime,
Truly.
anytime. All right.
Okay.